All right, coming through. Got it hot. You're hot.
Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to A View from the Bridge with Dr. Kurt Johnson and Dr. Jim Garrison. I am super excited to be bringing this conversation to World Unity Week. Two of the individuals who have the most extraordinary front row seat and see what's happening at the evolutionary level for humanity on Spaceship Earth. Where are we going and how do we get in the driver's seat of evolution? Firstly, welcome, Dr. Kurt Johnson, and welcome Jim Garrison of Ubiquity University and Humanity Rising. And so, Kurt, you and Jim have long bios. So rather than go and reading through the long bios, we're just going to dive straight into this because we've got a lot to cover, and I know people are super excited to hear about it. You and I met through an incredibly synchronistic situation. It was actually because Danae King was wearing a One God T-shirt that enabled us to be connected through the news field. So it's absolutely amazing to see what you do with the evolutionary leaders, with Pro-Social, the work you're doing with Integral, and how you bring all of these things together into an interconnected whole. And so we are very excited, Dr. Kurt Johnson, to have you take us through and open this conversation up of you from the bridge, getting in the driver's seat of evolution. Please, Kurt, take us away.
Now, Ben, thank you so much. And everyone, sooner or later, you're going to see me here. Welcome to the Starship Enterprise. And we're here to have some fun. And you'll see that Dr. Jim is actually in the belly of the Enterprise with the command center behind him. And I'm down below deck, but at least I got my uniform on. And I'm here with at least with my uniform on. So we're looking forward to having Starfleet Command take us on a bit of a journey about the status report for Spaceship Earth and where we're going. So where I'm going to start is I was on a program yesterday with Ken Wilber and Deepak Chopra. And Ken Wilber said, "This is an exciting time to be alive." So why did he say that? Well, the reason is that all the resources are on the table. All the wisdom resources from the past, and all the technological and knowledge resources from the present. And as the Dalai Lama said in his discussions with our friend and famous evolutionary biologist, David Sloan Wilson, in their discussions in India last year, finally science and spirituality are on the same course together. They're not telling two different stories anymore. They're on the same course. Now the question then again is why and how? And the answer is very simple. And that is, as a system complexifies, as anything gets bigger and bigger, the only way that it's going to survive, sustain itself, and thrive is by inclusivity. Just think about it. Whenever you have a growing system that is full of so many things, the only way it can succeed is to become more and more inclusive. And that is the four-letter word LOVE. It's not a big jump to jump from complexity to inclusivity and then to love. So science and spirit are no longer telling two different stories. Well, what was the old story? The old story from early Darwinism was all about this. It said that survival of the fittest meant that whoever struggled the most beat the other guy out, dog eat dog, Shark Tank. That was the definition of fitness. But as of about 7 years ago now, sweeping through all of mainstream science was the new cooperative paradigm of evolution that's based on the proofs of group selection and multi-level selection. And what that simply means is that even though individuals will choose for a selfish purpose, groups will always choose for the purpose that serves the whole and serves to create altruistic behavior. So the new rule now is, yes, survival of the fittest is true, but the definition of fitness changes as you go up the ladder. And as you get to higher and higher levels on the ladder, the definition of fitness is not the best competitor, but who is the best cooperator. So the other thing that it means is that when you're an intelligent species, or somewhat intelligent, like our species on this planet, you're in a situation to make conscious choice about where you go. And what this means is, with the theme of this show, that we get in the driver's seat of evolution and we make those choices from the best of our head knowing and from the best of our heart knowing, the best of science and the best of spirit, to drive this thing in the direction that we want it to go. Again, the theme of this whole week: do something and the world that works for all. Just one caveat before I stop, and that is that it's not just enough that the process will be favoring what serves the whole. We have to offer it those choices. So all of the activists out there, all of you who are creating things and doing things, you're the ones who create the choices that will drive this forward. Not Marjorie Taylor Greene, not Donald Trump, not those choices, which are all about this, but the choices that are all about this. So the other thing that Jim and I are going to want to discuss with Ben is, what are the lever points? What that means, what are the epiphanies that are happening now and can happen everywhere that can drive this thing forward in a positive direction, with us in the driver's seat from the enterprise to take this where we want to go. So hopefully that gets us started, and back to Ben and Dr. Jim in the control room.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful, Kurt. Let me just give a little bit of context here for Jim. Jim Garrison is the founder and president of Ubiquity University and the convener of Humanity Rising. And we're going to be talking a little bit about Humanity Rising because it's such an important part of this conversation. Jim came to this having served as president of Wisdom University, which he led from 2005 to 2012, after which he led its transition into Ubiquity University, established in 2012, as so much was. He has spent his entire professional life in executive leadership, including as co-founder and president of the Gorbachev Foundation and State of the World Forum, with Mikhail Gorbachev serving as convening chairman. There's lots more to say about Jim, as an extraordinary track record, and Humanity Rising, 400 days straight of incredible conversations and programs, are very much at the cutting edge of our evolutionary journey. And that's why, Jim, we're so delighted to have you with us here. Welcome to World Unity Week, and welcome to A View from the Bridge. And I love your background.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Captain Kurt. It's a pleasure to be on the SS Enterprise with you, sir. And Ben sent this background, and it looks a little bit like the Starship Enterprise. So I am just delighted to be here. Let me just underscore what Kurt said in the following way, given what we all know as the urgency of our hour, where scientists are telling us we basically have this next decade, this next 9 years till 2030 to either turn it around or not. And as Kurt says, we've got everything that we need. We have all the technological solutions, many of which have been around for years. But for whatever sets of reasons, we haven't been able to shift our consciousness. And within that context, I would just add 2 points, just again to affirm what Kurt said. And that is that what inclusion means to me is not just a conceptual embrace of the totality of being, but a political act of what we at Ubiquity and Humanity Rising call radical collaboration. This is a moment when we need to be actively, I would say promiscuously, wantonly collaborating with each other in order to create the critical mass necessary to actually make a difference. Because one of the reasons why the world continues to spin out of control, at the center of which is runaway climate change, is because the good people are doing lots of good stuff, but they're not organized with unity of purpose. If you've read Paul Hawkins' work or been on the website of Blessed Unrest, there are millions, maybe tens of millions of NGOs and organizations and initiatives of all kinds covering virtually every issue of challenge to humanity and planet operating at this moment. But very few of them are radically collaborating. And, you know, there's an old saying about the progressives that when they form up a firing squad, they form up the firing squad in a circle. And that's the bane of the left. That's the bane of progressives for some centuries. The right always seems to be much better organized, much more capable of discipline. We're a pretty disorganized bunch because we're so creative. But I would submit to you that inclusivity is an act of radical collaboration. It's a proactive, pro-social act of moving from cooperation to collaboration to co-creation. The second point that I think is worth contemplating as we consider what Kurt said, that everything's here. The solutions, the aspects of consciousness, but within that context, we need to remember what Les Brown has said repeatedly, that things are getting better and better, but worse and worse, faster and faster. So that's a challenge for our time. When we're now in a world where everything is possible, every tradition is available, all the technologies are accelerating all around us all the time, in a world now, according to experts, where human knowledge is doubling every 12 and a half minutes. We have to have the discernment to choose which of the traditions, which of the technologies will serve at this moment to unify human intention and create a better world. So I would say radical collaboration would be how I would begin this initiative about furthering evolution, coupled by a very discerning inquiry in the community as to which aspects of our inherited traditions from the past really are suitable for the goals we seek to achieve. So that would be how I would offer a starting point, Ben and Kurt, for our dialogue today.
Now, Jim, you know, I want to jump in on that because you said exactly right. When we were with the Dalai Lama in India, I delivered a letter to him from the famous Trappist monk, Father Thomas Keating, who had passed away just a few months before. The letter's never been made public, but what he did, he gave a list to the Dalai Lama of the things that we need to do. And then he said, a sentence that I have made public, very poignantly, he said, and it was all caps and in bold, we must find a way to make this actually happen. So you're absolutely right. There are worldwide now, in recent publications, many of us have named at least 12, integral spiral dynamics, good of the whole, go through a long list, regenerative design, of worldviews that are completely holistic, completely integral, and can run a system in the same way that Nobel Prize winner Elinor Ostrom won the Nobel Prize in 2009 for demonstrating how a system can operate and move forward without any element exploiting another if there are certain design principles in place. Now, in the academic community, the transformative community, we have these tools available. And yet, as you said, Jim, the rest of the world that sadly so often goes on business as usual is not adopting and using any of these things that could move all of this in that collaborative direction. And Don Beck, the founder of Spiral Dynamics, speaking at the UN about just before COVID, he said, if an ET wrote the history of our planet, if in fact we didn't make it, he would say the tragedies were twofold. One is that we couldn't make the proper diagnosis, so therefore we couldn't make the right prescription because we didn't honestly see what we were up against and face it. And the second is what you just said, Jim. The answers were there, but we couldn't hear them. And so this is why what Ben is doing and everything that's going on, World Unity Week, Global Oneness Day, Humanity Rising, Global Summit Solution, go through all the lists. We just have to bring these realizations to the level of epiphany in people so they'll get in that driver's seat, all the levels, and I space, the we space, the cultural and societal space, and make these things happen.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Jim. It's a very rich opening. So I just want to dive in a little bit deeper to what you both shared there about this kind of pivot point that we're at, about moving into, Jim, what you've called this radical cooperation. And perhaps I want to just presence and ask you both, firstly, what's stopping us? What's holding us back? Why are we not fully, deeply, widely collaborating? You had a beautiful term for it, Jim, which was very evocative. But why are we not having that kind of collaboration, which is abandoning all else and just diving into it? And I think we're getting closer, and we're getting better, and we're learning, and we're definitely progressing. But I just want a presence for all of us at the moment. What are the forces of resistance towards that? What are we up against? I know in pro-social world and pro-social training, there's some really good structures here, Kurt, for understanding some of the organizational and groups that are aligned around various purposes, and those purposes are not always the same. If you talk about Paul Hawken, you mentioned him before, Jim. He's coming up in World Unity Week on Wednesday. These tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of groups are similar, and they're connected, and they have, in general sense, going the same direction, but they're distinct as well, and they have their own unique identity. And until now, we haven't achieved that kind of wild, abandoned collaboration that you're calling forth, Jim Garrison, that Kurt is also seeing we're on the very tipping edge. So what's going to get us over the edge? What's going to get us from here, peering over the edge, seeing the potential and into that flow? We'd love to hear both your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm going to throw it to Jim, but I'm going to preface it by saying we all know it's because of what we've inherited from our evolutionary background. We've got so much chimp and bonobo in us that are all about this. And even in the spiritual community, even the best of us, we tend to revert back to somewhere between the mammalian and reptilian brain and still be about this type of competitive and conflictual type of relationship. That's what we're trying to get out of. So I want to just start with that, but throw it to Jim.
Well, you're asking, Ben, the $64,000 question. And I actually did my PhD dissertation on that question of why it is that after 4.5 billion years of evolutionary life on this planet, our species in our generation has brought the entire life process to the brink of extinction through nuclear war, through climate change. We're on the brink of self-destruction. And the question of why is, I think, something that comes out of our evolutionary past. It also comes out of our ideologies that were developed, in the Neolithic Revolution. And as we moved into civilization and patriarchal society, when Rousseau was asked that question, he said the original sin was the notion of private property. He says that when humans begin to look at the earth and divide it into mine and yours, nothing but violence would ensue. And I think that's worth contemplating. I think another aspect, which is, I think, a little painful for those of us in the West, but it's the metaphysic of dualism. You know, if you look at the history of world intellectual thought, in antiquity, there was a consensus between China and India and Mesopotamia and Egypt and Greece, even into Mesoamerica, that life was unitary, that it was cyclic, that there was a transmigration of souls that was governed by ethical norms. And then in the middle of that consensus, Zoroaster, about 1000 BC, articulated a fundamentally different metaphysic, and it was a metaphysic of dualism, that the cosmos was not unitary. There was a split, and that was embraced by the Abrahamic religions. And whenever you split something that's fundamentally unified, you create a fissure that ultimately is consequential on how we understand the world and behave toward each other. And if you think of the violence that has ensued at the hands of the Abrahamic religions over the last 2,000, 2,500 years or so, it's been horrendous. And I think what we have to take in fundamentally, to answer your question, Ben, in my view, is, you know, we've got it down that we need to shift from fossil fuels to alternative technology. We have to leave the oil in the ground now, period, end of story, and embrace clean technology and alternative energy. We haven't made that shift because the consciousness, so many people are still embracing the dualistic consciousness of the Abrahamic religions, of the Cartesian split, of the Enlightenment, and they keep trying to fix a broken world with the same mentality that broke it, and they can't do it. And the reason why we're not recognizing the technologies that are there, because we literally can't see them. So part of what we're doing at Ubiquity University is we're choosing very carefully what we teach our students. And let me give you a very quick example, then I'll turn it back over to Kurt. We just launched a course with Kate Raworth on the fundamentals of donut economics. And what Kate Raworth is doing is she's upending economics. This is not about the market, she says. It's not about Adam Smith. It's not about the Chicago School and neoliberal economics, which is exploitation and profits above all things and nature's externality. She says we need a completely different story, and everything that has been taught in economics needs to be retired. And we need to start, ladies and gentlemen, with a donut. That the inner circle is about how humanity thrives and is abundant within the outer circle of ecological resources and constraints. So the genius of Kate Raworth, and I urge everybody to read Donut Economics, is she has grasped that the consciousness that produced the problem can't keep solving it. You can't solve the current global problems with neoliberal economic theory and classical capitalism. So part of what we in the movement need to learn, in my view, is the power of the no. It's not all about yes. We're not in a world where everything is everything and we just love it all. That's going to take us off the cliff, in my view. The movement needs to be highly discerning about the kind of consciousness we need, because as soon as we can embrace, once you see donut economics And by the way, it's turned out to be the largest course we've ever offered by several orders of magnitude in the history of the university. It's the equivalent of Einstein's E equals MC squared. So, and I would put Unity Week, Ben, in that category. What you're trying to bring into the world is a completely new consciousness. And from the framework of that new consciousness, you can see the obviousness of the technologies that could solve all of our physical and technical problems in an instant. But until the consciousness is there, which requires us letting go of the inherited traditions, particularly in the West, I would say the Abrahamic traditions and our economic theories, we need to just leave that by the side of the road with all the blessings we can muster and embrace pro-social new forms of learning. We've got to retire Darwin. Darwin was a genius. The origin of species, it was the best he could do. But we shouldn't be teaching the origin of species anymore in our classroom. We should be teaching David Sloan Wilson's pro-social evolutionary theory, so that this new generation coming up has the consciousness to both understand the diagnosis that Kurt was talking about, and then the prescription to solve the problems.
Yeah, amen. So actually what Jim's been doing, he's been moving us toward good news. And that's also, where I want to go. Part of the good news is that there really is only one Darwinism. We're kind of in the 5th iteration now, which has completely transformed Darwinism into something that is steering us in this positive direction. So it's still Darwinism, but it's actually understanding Darwin himself. He speaks about love and cooperation and all of these things, particularly in The Descent of Man. It's just that all of this got hijacked by the very types of mental decisions that Jim went on about. Now, what's happening now is that, and this is the good news, we are moving into this emergent era where the very discovery that Ben was talking about, and that is, what is a group consciousness? How does it emerge? How do we utilize it skillfully? So for instance, we just got a new book actually at Light on Light to review. It's from our friends at Vishtar, Ron Friedman, Victoria Friedman, laying out their 30-year voyage toward experiencing group consciousness. And when we read this book, we said, oh my God, we've had this same conversation. We named then 20 other leaders around the world that all of you would have heard of. Every one of those communities, every one of those groups, and I know Ben and his community the same way, has experienced the magic when that other layer of consciousness emerges. Now, Ken Wilber calls that 2nd tier or even 3rd tier. But what happens is it's like when you're in love with somebody and you've got this resonance, this nearly telepathic relationship by which you are relating and co-creating by vibration and resonance and energy instead of just the mind, which is a parsing mechanism. So every group around the world, and this is the good news, is experiencing this emergence of what a group experience is like. And actually, I was having this discussion with Andrew Cohen, actually. Now, all the iterations that he's been through in his life, and we had boiled it down to kind of the model of volcanoes. There are volcanoes, the cone ones that just, bam, they just blow up all at once. And then there's the shield volcanoes that flow like in Hawaii. And we see the experience of group consciousness happening in both ways. There are communities who report it, bam, like at a concert or in an artistic experience. Suddenly they went into a group think and a group emotion. Or that would be on the theta side, but on the alpha side of the slow wavelengths, then it's like that shield volcano and it's flowing. And suddenly you're in that group experience where there's not several people anymore, but there's actually one superorganism that's there. So I know, and I've seen, and I think everyone in the room has seen that emergence. So the question is, how do we raise that medicine? How do we find that sweet spot more and more and more and utilize it in everything we do? That would be the ultimate of the type of ultra collaboration that Jim's talking about.
Wonderful, and it's it's great. It's a fascinating conversation, and people are responding in the chat and out on different social media as well to just the brilliance that you two are offering. And I guess the question that's hanging there, which is, what can we do to accelerate this? And Jim, it sounds like we know at Ubiquity University, you're doing everything and more to try and really move the needle on lifting up that consciousness. And Kurt is involved in so many groups that are doing the same thing. And World Unity Week itself is an example of holding space for an emergent and something new to come through. And I suppose really, apart from the only answer that possibly could be, which is just learning by doing and really following inspiration, trial and trial and trial and trial again. I won't call it trial and error, but just trial and correction. And that willingness to, I think it was be promiscuous collaboration, Jim Garrison, you were talking about, willingness to be non-discriminate, undiscriminate in how we do it and how we show up, and really to give it everything and put it all forward on the line. And I feel like that's what we see more and more groups doing. More and more individuals and platforms are really willing to cross that threshold and say, hey, we're not sure where this is going. We're kind of losing control here, but we're willing to do it because there is no other alternative. There is no other alternative but to go across that threshold of the unknown. Jim Garrison.
Well, I just want to underscore what you're saying, Ben, because I think to me, what you just said is the bottom line in facing the future. And I think I had a conversation with John Raymer a little bit ago, and he laid it out, and I think 3 stages that are profoundly useful. And I think the relationship between Ubiquity and Humanity Rising and World Unity Week over the last year exemplifies the way forward. When we launched Humanity Rising last year, everyone, it came out of the depths of the pandemic. We didn't quite know what to do, but we knew that there was a huge opportunity here somewhere, because that's what crisis is just another view of an opportunity. And for us, it was creating a daily common ground so that people from all over the world could come together and share their experiences of what it's like traversing through this extraordinary pandemic. And we made a commitment to do it day in and day out for as long as the pandemic lasted, but we thought it'd be over maybe by late summer. We began to have conversations with Ben and John. It was at that time that I met Ben. I'd heard about him, John Raymer as well, but we'd never really synced up. And we decided in 2020, well, let's do something. So Unity Week was doing something, and we kind of supported it, and they started to support Humanity Rising and Ubiquity. And then 2021 came, and we moved from the kind of loose cooperation to collaboration. And what we've done for this week is every day on Humanity Rising, we're beaming out Unity Week. Unity Week has brought me in and various other people from Humanity Rising into Unity Week, and we're actively collaborating. And we've agreed that after the dust settles on Unity Week, Kurt, Ben, numbers of us are going to get together and say, okay, what were the lessons learned? And how do we start looking at 2022 to move beyond collaboration to co-creation? How can we, a year from now, be co-creating in such a way that we are synergizing our capacity here, both in terms of number and in terms of impact? Bearing in mind, we've only got a few years, the 2020s, to pull this thing off. We're in the most consequential decade in the history of our kind, without a doubt. So that's what I think radical, promiscuous collaboration is. It's this passion to move from cooperation to collaboration to co-creativity with an alignment of purpose along the principles that Kurt has described.
Yeah, and one thing I want to make sure we do, before we go to Q&A, because we want to do that. One of the things that we've talked about, Jim and I've had this conversation on another program, is what are the lever points by which, to answer Ben's question, could really uptick the rate at which we're going? And two of them that we've discussed, I know whenever I see somebody who's got it, somebody who's really found that sweet spot at the level of resonance, then you know that this possibility exists. Somebody's raised the bar that high and they're living by that. And you know that if they can do it, you can do it, everyone can do it. That's really a great lever point. But the other one we've talked about is what would it be like if humanity could truly understand that we are not alone? And not only are we not alone, but as far as the whole universe goes, we may be quite a very primitive, as someone, Danny Sheehan said, a sideshow within a sideshow relative to how important we are. That might help us get some global humility from whence we go from beating up on each other, which is what we're doing now for 5,000 years, to actually getting in this collaborative mode. So this whole thing that's going on now about the taking seriously of the new data, that there may actually be craft and other things which have capabilities demonstrated by the Navy, the Pentagon, huge groups in the academic community now that are 1,000 years or more ahead of any technology we understand. And if this can't be denied anymore, and it can't be marginalized anymore, we may suddenly find, this would be as big, Jim and I were saying, as the Copernican revolution, where we realized the sun didn't go around us, we went around the sun. So if we could get that into our mentality and have some planetary humility, that would be just, I think, a huge lever point. So I wanted to be sure to throw that one back to Jim and everyone else.
Yeah, well, it certainly would be. It certainly would be a big lever point, wouldn't it? It would be a change everything in so many different ways. There are some great questions here in the chat. I want to kick off with I think a really challenging one and an important one for us because Jim and Kurt, you're talking about the urgency and the need for scaling this transformation, and yet there are many of our brothers and sisters who are not really in this conversation. So Vinette Allen is asking, when we talk of collaborating, is it possible to include conservatives that are not seeking that? And how would you work with that?
Jim, do you want to go first?
Well, in my view, as an American citizen, national polity now where, Donald Trump has taken over the Republican Party. The Republican Party has drunk the Kool-Aid around the big lie, supported at its heart by, evangelical Christians. And my whole family is evangelical. My parents were missionaries. I was the only one who escaped that particular Kool-Aid. To me, I think the world has gone beyond that kind of dialogue. I think where we are is that our house is on fire. It's no longer serving us to discuss with the people lighting the fire whether we should continue to do that or not. We have to run out and get the buckets of water. And I think that's what Unity Week is doing. It's what Humanity Rising is doing. It's what Kurt is doing. It's what Ken Wilber's doing. It's what Deepak Chopra is doing. There's not a lot of dialogue left, certainly in the United States. And I think globally, we're in such a point of duress, in my view, that we just need to take the actions requisite to get enough buckets of water to throw on the flames, that discourse, as the Buddha said, when he would go to heal someone and someone would ask, well, how is this person diseased? Why is this person diseased? He says, these aren't questions leading to edification. I'm just here to heal. And healing, as Buckminster Fuller said, is not dealing with the problem. It's creating the solution. And anyway, that's where I put my time, but I honor people that want to continue to try to create, like with Senator Manchin in the US Senate, who thinks that the Republicans are going to change their mind. I don't believe he will be successful. That's just the state of play on our planet right now, when the fire is burning our house down.
Yeah, and the way that I would answer that question very briefly, because I want to go right to the heart of the question, I think these things are a matter of the heart. So when you talk about conservative values in a political sense, there are certain conservative values that are heart-centered. Fiscal conservatism certainly would be. Not having the government interfere in your private life certainly would be. So we would need to understand what conservatism is. But in the long run, the definition of a community is how much the community actually cares about the well-being of its members. So when we go to any type of social system that is pushing groups aside, marginalizing groups, creating identity groups and dominance hierarchies, it's not heart consistent. And it's a difficult thing that the whole world's going through, very different in every country. But I think the bottom line in that question is what is the matter at the level of the heart?
And if I could add to what Kurt just said, Ben and Vineet. By the way, hi, Vineet. Good to see you on the program. Vineet and I go back a ways. I would say, again, Kate Raworth is a good example. She's not engaging in all kinds of dialogue with the neoliberal economic theorists. She's asserting we need a whole new model. And the power of donut economics is the power of a mind that is attuned to the future, the needs of the future, not how do I make you feel comfortable, that person who I fundamentally disagree with. But her energy is, again, with Buckminster Fuller, she's creating the future and allowing the creation of the future to become its own attractor. And I think that, to me, is where our power is. And I think that, to me, is where the real conversation with the conservatives are. It's not an intellectual, how do we agree or disagree up here? It's taking the kind of action like Kate is in reimagining the world and then inviting them into a dialogue with what is creating the future.
Mm. Magnificent. And I know part of the conversation preparing for this, Kurt, you volunteered and shared that you've recently submitted an article to Ken Wilber's magazine that is really weaving together pro-social with integral, with interspiritual and all of these. And I know at the heart of it, it's really about groups and groups coming together. And there's a question from Priya Martini here, which is saying, I still think there's some essential ingredients to cultivate that emergent group consciousness, and would love to hear what you both think those ingredients are, setting the conditions for this group consciousness to arise. What would you say to that, Kurt?
Yeah, okay. Well, this is interesting because in the book that we're looking at and in all the people I talk to, there are, exactly like you say, there are these signposts, these inflection points that are along the way. And some of the big transitions are, where do you move from a modality, a method, to when the magic shows up and the modality and the method aren't even needed anymore? So one of the questions is so interesting, when we go from things that are actually a little bit more definable and then we go into the magic of that other realm, it's not so easy when we track that transition. But we're actually asking, to answer your question, we're asking these authors and the others that we're talking to, let's further define these signposts on the way. Same question you're asking. So we might be able to identify when is it that that magic arises. And that's true in any love relationship. Let's face it. There's a great Buddhist author who said the closest thing to enlightenment is falling in love. If you could just get rid of the selfishness, you'd have it all. So there's so much truth in that. So yeah, hopefully this is emergent process. And very much as Jim said, it's the magnetism of emergent process that brings one level to the next. It's a push and a pull. And that's that attractor beam of what, like Deepak Chopra said, it's like there's a universal blueprint. And in that, it's just emergence upon emergence upon emergence upon emergence.
Yeah, I would add to that just very quickly, heart coherence. I know, Ben, that one of your partners for this week is the Global Coherence Pulse. If you want to build community, everyone, participate in the Global Coherence Pulse, where people from all over the world for about an hour, maybe 90 minutes, commune together and then culminate with just listening to their heartbeats. And the research, as you all know, is that, you know, when two lovers contemplate each other, even if they're in opposite sides of the world, their hearts
I've been going in since for a year now. I go in once a week and I get
Janice,
a
we're
beat.
gonna mute you, Janice. Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Their hearts begin to beat as one. And not only do their hearts begin to beat as one, but they begin to beat with the electromagnetic pulse of the earth itself. So part of building community isn't just Unity Week and Humanity Rising is going 24/7, you know, without any sleep, and Kurt, you know, reading one manuscript. That's part of it. But the deeper community, to me, is the container of it all. And that's the coming into an alignment at a global level with one pulse. And I reflect on that. And every day with Humanity Rising, we take about 2 minutes and we just come into alignment with our own hearts, understanding that all of our hearts are just going to beat together, even for 60 seconds. And when that happens in the etheric realms, a container has been created. Then all the chit chat and dialogue, everything, the Sturm und Drang of our humanity is contained ultimately, in my view, by the mother, the great mother who holds all of us all the time.
Yeah, it's amazing. One thing that Adyashanti has said that I think so many people remember, he said, isn't it a paradox that the very people who know in non-dual consciousness that in the world of absolute reality, everything is fine, nothing ever happened, nothing ever will happen. You feel that when you hear a bird sing, when you're sitting on your patio, listen to the wind in the trees, and you know in that level of ultimate reality, everything is fine, everything is perfect. But as Ajay says, isn't it a paradox that the same people who understand that experience also have the heart that beats in them to stop on the road like the Samaritan did, you know, cure this problem. In the relative reality, all of those things are real. And as Deepak talked about in the whole Vedic vision, you've got absolute reality and relative reality. And we're like stewards from the absolute reality to take care of every aspect of the relative reality, which is environment and people and, you know, everything that's beautiful and delicate in the world. So we live in that paradox. Luckily, we can live in the peace, in that I place, that everything is perfect, always has been perfect. But in the unfolding, let's say on this particular planet, there are problems, and the heart, it doesn't ask us, it demands that we meet these calls. And thank God for the transformative community, everybody we know, everybody we work with, that we're all in that mode. It's the Bodhisattva vow. You know what it is. I know what enlightenment is, but I won't enjoy it that much until I've helped everyone else find that. You know, I may take a little vacation here and there into the non-dual world, but I need to serve here to help those who are still experiencing suffering. So it is quite an ultimate paradox.
Mm. Well, the paradox of being on the threshold, this moment of transition from one way of being on the planet to an emerging way of being, which is not entirely accurate to be called new, because it is drawing upon so much of ancient wisdom and knowledge and experience running through many of the wisdom traditions. But it is new in the sense that we haven't done it before at a global level. And this idea of this, profound radical collaboration that is emerging and that is happening, and it's been forced by the urgency of the situation where we just don't have a choice anymore. And that really, we've seen it over the last year, Jim, and the work that you've done at Humanity Rising has been amazing. Everything that Kurt is connected to, and seeing these whole groups of wholes coming together is creating new wholes, greater wholes, and our identities are expanding. To which we belong is expanding beyond just our organizations, beyond our platforms and our initiatives and our brands and our groups, is expanding into infinity. And it's that expansion which is setting the grounds, I think, that give us the hope to continue to show up as a greater whole beyond the platforms and beyond the initiatives that that we're very close to our hearts. And yet we're seeing that they can't do it on their own. And so that's why we have to dive in to this greater wholeness. So it's been the evolutionary force, Kurt, you would say, is actually propelling us into this deeper synergy and collaboration as a matter of survival. So just in closing, Jim and Kurt, it's been so wonderful to have you with us. It'd be great maybe just to hear your closing thoughts. We're just about to kick off the Convergence Rooms tomorrow. There are 500 events across the week. I see Jonathan Granoff is with us. We have a plenary with him and Maria Espinoza coming up on Wednesday. And there's so much more. There's a conversation with Deepak Vandana Shiva, Paul Hawken, and these are just the people that you might know. But there are just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of extraordinary voices and hearts and spirits and souls that have come together to do this together. So we're learning by doing. And thank you, Jim, for the trust and the deep generosity of Ubiquity and Humanity Rising to be a co-convener and an essential part of World Unity Week. And Kurt, as always, the very heart of Unity Earth and what Unity Earth is doing. So just in closing, Jim and Kurt, how would you like to wrap this up?
Well, what I would say is that there is a payback, thank God. All this work that we do, the payback is those moments when we feel this very unity that we're talking about. And we have those moments where everything closes into that one place. I'm just thinking now, looking at people who are on the show. Jonathan Granoff and I sat down one night on Zoom and had a long chat, and it was magic. He talked about everything that he's learned from all these people in his tradition, and I did the same. And it's like Wayne Teasdale talked about putting logs on a fire, and the fire just builds and builds. And then you get that magic payback of what consciousness and heart are all about. So let's hope we have many more of those together, and with all the beloveds that are around us. That's how I would close out.
It's great to have been with you, Captain Kurt. If I would add one thing, I'd like to just touch on the word promiscuous, Ben, because there was a couple of chats kind of reacting against that word, because it does have a sexual connotation. But at its heart, and originally, promiscuous means beyond boundaries. And I think that essential meaning is important. You think of Rumi, beyond the field of right and wrong, I will meet you there. And I think what radical collaboration means in our time is exemplified by the partnership that you see here today between Ubiquity and Humanity Rising and evolutionary leaders and Unity Week and so forth and so on. We're not asking questions of boundaries. We're saying we've got to draw water and carry the buckets hand in hand now, And it is the unity of purpose that should unite us beyond all of our differences. That is the key to creating the critical mass. And I would close, Ben, with just having this thought experiment. Just imagine, if not half, but 10% of all the organizations in the world that are doing good right now were as united as Evolutionary Leaders, Unity Week, and Humanity Rising. Just imagine what would be going on in planet Earth right now. This broadcast, as powerful it is less than 1% of 1% of 1%. So what I mean about radical collaboration and promiscuous, I mean it in that fundamental way of, let's just get beyond ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just say yes. And that's what I loved about Ben. We got together, and one of our first things, having really never met, is, yes, I love you. Let's do this. Let's just do this, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're about. Let's just do this.
Yes, absolutely. Let's just do this, Jim Garrison. It's a joy and an honor. We have a minute or two left, so you said something about unity of purpose, which just struck me as fundamental. And I think this is going to be something that we can answer in these conversations that go beyond World Unity Week and into the months ahead. But having done the pro-social training, and Kurt, pretty much any group, the first thing is setting its identity is, what is our unity of purpose? So maybe just with the 1 minute you've got left each, how would you answer this? And I realize this is going to be a living answer that we will evolve and we'll continue to dive into together. But it strikes me as a good one to maybe leave hanging in the air as we close today. What is this grand unity of purpose that brings the conditions for our unity, Kurt?
Well, I think all of you know, and every gifted teacher says this, the minute consciousness awakens, the heart moves and says, this experience is everybody, is for everybody, gives peace, gives health, gives well-being. And this is what needs to then flow unreservedly from heart to heart. The minute awakened consciousness experiences reality, it flows into knowing that there is no other. So that just takes care of everything that you all just said.
And just to put it another way, I would say that it's that attitude, Ben, where you embrace all life as equally sacred, intelligent, communicative, and interconnected. And beyond the field of all of the differences that we create in our minds, out of which we compete and kill and do violence and destructiveness of all kinds, there's this field of unity where all is one, and I am you, and we are all of it. And in that field, as the Buddha said 2,500 years ago, that emptiness where all is connected, that's the cradle of compassion.
Magnificent. It sounds like unity is our purpose, and our purpose is unity, and unity is our purpose. And so in closing, I want to present our very generous sponsors, Purpose Earth. And I note that Emmanuel and Laura are here with us. It looks like they're in a very cozy part of Spain there somewhere. Let's just bring them forward so we can see Emmanuel and Laura there. And just for this last minute, with 1 minute, if we can, we're going to show, this is actually a premiere. We're going to show you the brand new 90-second promo from Purpose Earth. And Purpose Earth is the primary sponsor for World Unity Week. How do we give these 500 events free as a free gift to the world? How do we model that spirit of generosity that David Sloan Wilson is showing and proving it really is the way forward, is generosity and love and Emmanuel and Laura are wonderful examples of that. And this is hot off the press, the Purpose Earth. Just bear with me as I get it set up here. It's a 90-second piece, and we're good to go to share that.
This is the time for world to come together and connect and embrace.
Because it brought to life the exact intent I had for this project, to upskill people whilst preserving our environment. There's no better joy.
Purpose Earth grant and mentorship program has helped us to achieve our mission and goals.
And this is the time that we need to let go of all of our barriers and the things that told us to not do, and let go of everything and really participate in oneness, humanity, and really care for each other.
All right. Well, so just figure out how to stop this screen share. Excuse me for a second. This is Purpose Earth, and they, as I said, are the primary funders of the whole of World Unity Week, along with some co-sponsors. And we're pioneering a new model because we are in people who are appreciating and enjoying this program are invited not to give to World Unity Week, not to try and help us pay off our debts for having put on World Unity Week, but rather in a much more enlightened, pay it forward spirit of generosity to support future grant recipients through the Purpose Earth Fund. So we're asking everyone, go to the Giving Tree. It's on the One World map. Go to purposeearth.org. Give generously. 100% will go to future grant recipients around the world. So it's all part of this new evolutionary model. Thank you, Jim Garrison, for being with us. Thank you, Captain Kurt, for being with us. You really were absolutely brilliant, insightful, enlightening, inspiring, and definitely win the prize for the best featured event banner poster in World Unity Week. That's going to be hard to beat in the years to come. But we really inspired us and delighted us. And thank you, Jim. And we're looking forward to the journey ahead and the evolutionary adventure. Get in the driver's seat, strap ourselves in, and let's do something together. And let's go into the great unknown. Thank you, everybody. Good night and God bless.
Thank you, Ben.